The vote counter flickered to its final number. Unanimous. Every single delegate in the Galactic Council chamber had just approved the Krillian demand. Ambassador David Reed sat perfectly still in the human delegation box, watching the insects celebrate. Their chittering filled the vast hall like a swarm of locusts descending on crops. High Commander Shrix raised all four of his blade-like arms in triumph. His exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights, polished to mirror brightness for this moment. He had planned this perfectly. 47 human colony worlds, all established before the Krillian Empire had even explored this sector, now declared forfeit. The vote gave humanity one solar cycle to evacuate or face military action. Reed touched the broken skin on his cheek where Shrix had struck him an hour earlier. The blow had come during the initial presentation, when Reed politely pointed out that human settlements predated Krillian territorial claims by 2 centuries. Physical violence in the council chambers violated 800 years of tradition, but traditions meant nothing when you commanded 50,000 warships. The other species looked away from Reed now. Shame, perhaps, or relief that the Krillians had chosen humans as their target instead of someone else. The galaxy had learned to fear the insectoid empire. 12 conquered species served as object lessons in what happened when you resisted Krillian expansion. Orin, the Avian Council speaker, ruffled his silver feathers nervously. His species had survived 3 millennia through careful diplomacy and strategic neutrality. He caught Reed's eye and made a small gesture with one wing. A warning, an apology. Reed nodded slightly in acknowledgement. The human delegation wishes to respond. Shrix clicked his mandibles together in what passed for a laugh among his kind. Perhaps to beg for more time, to offer tribute. Reed stood. His movements were calm and measured. Every delegate in the chamber watched him. The humans had joined the galactic community only 80 years ago. Newcomers, young, untested in the brutal reality of interstellar politics. They had exactly 200 military vessels. The Krillians could deploy 50,000. "We request 24 hours to consult with our home government," Reed said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber despite the blood still trickling from his broken nose. "We will deliver our response tomorrow at this same time." Shrix's antennae twitched with amusement. 24 hours to pack your belongings. How generous of you to not waste the council's time. We accept. Reed gathered his documents with deliberate care. He walked down the long aisle toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Every species present understood what they had just witnessed. The Krillian Empire had selected its next victim. Humanity would either surrender or be destroyed. There were no other options. History had proven this again and again. But Reed paused at the chamber doors. He turned back to face the assembly. "High Commander Shrix, when we return tomorrow, I hope you're prepared to live with the consequences of what happened here today." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Something in Reed's tone made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Shrix simply laughed louder. "Empty threats from a dying species. We'll see you tomorrow, human." Reed left without another word. Across thousands of light years, the emergency session of the unified human government convened within 30 minutes of receiving Reed's report. Prime Minister Laura Okonkwo stood before the assembled representatives from every human world. Her dark skin showed the exhaustion of someone who had not slept since the crisis began, but her eyes blazed with intensity. The massive display behind her showed the 47 colonies under threat. New Anchorage with its vast wheat fields feeding 3 billion people. Darwin's Reach where humanity had first discovered evidence of ancient alien civilizations. New Addis Ababa, the cultural heart of human expansion into the stars. Hundreds of millions of lives, trillions in infrastructure, generations of dreams and hard work. "We have 3 options," Military Chief Patricia Reeves said. She was a compact woman with gray hair and scars from the Mars Rebellion 40 years prior. 1. We comply. Evacuate 47 worlds. 2. We negotiate, hope for a compromise. 3. We fight. Silence filled the chamber. Everyone understood what option 3 meant. War against an empire that had never lost. War against odds of 250 to 1. War that would likely end with human extinction. The Krillians have destroyed 12 species, the delegate from Europa said quietly. Completely. No survivors. No mercy. They don't accept surrender once fighting begins. If we choose war and lose, humanity ends. And if we run, Okonkwo's voice cut through the fear like a blade. What happens the next time someone decides our worlds look attractive? We've already retreated across 3 sectors to avoid conflicts. Where do we run when there's nowhere left to go? She touched a control. The display changed. Images appeared. Human history compressed and brutal. Ancient warriors with bronze spears. Medieval knights in armor. Soldiers in muddy trenches. Pilots in burning aircraft. Marines storming beaches. Guerrilla fighters in jungles. The record of 15,000 documented wars spanning recorded human history. Our species almost destroyed itself 47 times, Okonkwo continued. We know war. We know its cost. We know the horror. That's exactly why we've tried so hard to avoid it out here among the stars. She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. But running forever isn't peace. It's just slower death. The Krillian High Commander struck our ambassador in front of the entire galaxy. He threatened our children. He gave us an ultimatum. And now we have a choice about what kind of species we want to be. The vote took less than 5 minutes. When it finished, Okonkwo nodded slowly. Send the message to Ambassador Reed. All of it, every piece. Let them see what they've awakened. She turned to Reeves. Patricia, activate Protocol Thermopylae. If we're doing this, we do it properly. The Council won't expect us to actually fight, Reeves said. No, Okonkwo agreed. They expect us to be rational, to calculate the odds and surrender. They don't understand that humanity has never been particularly good at accepting unacceptable situations. She looked at the images still displayed behind her. Thousands of years of human warfare. The stubborn refusal to quit even when losing. The ability to endure unimaginable suffering and keep fighting. Send one more message, she said quietly. To all human colonies, tell them what's coming. Tell them we're not running. Tell them to prepare. The command went out across human space at faster-than-light speeds, and on every world the response was the same. Not panic, not fear, but grim determination, because humanity had faced extinction before, and humanity was still here. 24 hours passed like years. The Galactic Council chamber filled again, but this time the atmosphere felt different. Tense, expectant. Word had spread through diplomatic channels that something unusual was happening. Human commercial vessels across 3 sectors had simultaneously stopped trading. Human diplomats had recalled their families from other species' homeworlds. Human research stations had gone dark. Shrix arrived with 50 guards, their weapons openly displayed. A violation of council protocols, but nobody challenged him. He settled into the Krillian delegation box with satisfied clicks of his mandibles. Around him, his officers chittered quietly about the celebration planned for tonight. The humans would surrender. There was no other logical outcome. Reed entered alone. No guards, no assistants, just a small data chip clutched in one hand. He looked like he had not slept. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, but he walked with the same measured calm as before. Ambassador Reed, Oren called the session to order with visible reluctance. The Council recognizes the human delegation. You have requested to address the Assembly regarding the Krillian territorial claim. Thank you, Council Speaker. Reed approached the central podium. He inserted the data chip into the interface. High Commander Shrix demanded our answer. Here it is. The chamber lights dimmed. A massive holographic projection filled the air above the assembly floor. It showed a human colony world at dawn, children walking to schools, farmers working fields of golden grain, scientists in laboratories, ordinary life across dozens of settlements. A woman's voice began speaking, calm, clear. You demanded we abandon our homes. You struck our ambassador. You gave us one day to surrender 47 worlds or face extermination. The image shifted. Now it showed families, parents holding children, elderly couples who had spent decades building new lives on distant planets, young people who had never seen Earth but called these colonies home. We decline. The hologram changed again. Historical footage now, ancient humans hunting with stone-tipped spears, medieval armies clashing with swords and shields. The images accelerated. Muskets, cannons, machine guns, tanks, aircraft, missiles. The progression of human warfare across 10,000 years. Humanity has fought over 15,000 documented wars in our recorded history, the narration continued. We've killed each other with every weapon imaginable. We've burned cities. We've starved populations. We've nearly destroyed our own species 47 separate times. Nuclear detonations filled the hologram, mushroom clouds rising over cities, the raw destructive power that humans had unleashed on themselves. Several council delegates gasped. Others looked away. The Solarians, a peaceful aquatic species, physically recoiled from their seats. We evolved on a planet with 1.3 times standard gravity, the voice went on. Images showed Earth's diverse and deadly ecosystems. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. We survived ice ages. We survived predators that hunted us. We survived diseases that killed billions. We looked at a world trying to destroy us and we conquered it. The hologram shifted to human achievements. The first aircraft, the first spacecraft, humans walking on their moon, establishing colonies on Mars, reaching beyond their solar system. We are the species that looked at the stars and decided to go there without asking permission. We are the species that split atoms just to understand how they work. We are the species that turned our predators into pets and our deserts into gardens. Now the footage showed human endurance. Marathon runners crossing finish lines after 26 miles, mountain climbers reaching impossible peaks, explorers crossing polar ice, humans pushing themselves beyond reasonable limits simply because they could. You have 50,000 warships. We have 200. Prime Minister Okonkwo appeared in the hologram now, speaking directly to the council. You believe this makes victory certain. You've forgotten something important about humanity. She leaned forward, her expression hard as steel. We've faced worse odds and won. We've been outgunned, outnumbered, outmatched, and we've survived by being more stubborn than our enemies, by refusing to accept defeat, by making every inch of ground cost more than it's worth. The hologram showed more recent military footage, human forces in training exercises, ships maneuvering in complex formations, soldiers moving with practiced precision. Your empire has conquered 12 species. Congratulations! We've conquered ourselves repeatedly and learned from every single failure. We've studied warfare for our entire existence. We've turned killing each other into an art form, a science, and a warning to ourselves about the cost of aggression. Okonkwo's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. High Commander Shrix, you gave us an ultimatum. Now we give you one. Withdraw your territorial claim. Apologize for striking our ambassador. Accept that human colonies remain human. You have 12 hours. And if we refuse, Shrix couldn't help himself. He stood in his delegation box, mandibles spread wide in anger. You threaten us. You dare. Okonkwo smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. If you refuse, you'll learn why Earth has 47 words for war in our primary language alone. You'll discover why every human child studies military history. You'll understand why we've tried so desperately to avoid conflict out here among the stars. The hologram shifted one final time. It showed a simple image, A small blue planet hanging in black space. Earth, fragile and beautiful. "We don't want war," Okonkwo said quietly. "We know its cost better than any species in this chamber. We've paid that price in our own blood for thousands of years. But if you force this fight, we will show you what evolution on a death world creates. We will show you what happens when you threaten the species that hunted mammoths with pointed sticks and won." The hologram faded. The chamber lights returned to normal. Reed stood at the podium, waiting. Silence. Then Shrix began laughing, deep, chittering laughter that echoed off the walls. His officers joined in. Soon half the Krillian delegation was laughing. "Magnificent theater," Shrix called out. "Truly, you humans have a gift for drama, but words and old videos don't change mathematics. 50,000 ships against 200. We'll give you another 12 hours to reconsider this foolishness. Pack your belongings. Prepare to evacuate. Because when we come, we'll turn every human world into ash." Reed gathered his data chip. He walked toward the exit without responding. But at the doors he stopped, turned, looked directly at Shrix. "We gave you a chance. Remember that when this is over." He left. The chamber erupted in heated discussion. Some species thought the humans had gone insane. Others remembered the footage of human wars and felt the first stirrings of doubt. Oren sat in his speaker's chair, wings wrapped tight around his body. He had studied human history more than most. He knew what those images meant. The Krillians had just declared war on a species that treated warfare as their greatest teacher. This would not end well for someone. And Oren suspected it would not be humanity. The Krillian war fleet assembled at the staging point like a metal storm. 5,000 warships in the first wave, each bristling with weapons designed to crack planets. Commander Shrix stood on the bridge of his flagship Inevitable Victory, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The target was Darwin's Reach, a human colony established 90 years ago on the edge of explored space. Long-range scans showed 12 human vessels in orbit around the colony, 12 against 5,000. The odds were so absurd that several of Shrix's officers questioned whether the humans were actually going to fight, or if this was some elaborate surrender ritual nobody understood. "They're not retreating," the sensor operator reported, confusion clear in his chittering voice. "All 12 ships are moving to intercept vectors." "Let them come," Shrix said. "They want to die as warriors. We'll grant them that honor. All ships, standard formation, advance." The Krillian fleet moved forward like a wall of death. Their formation had conquered worlds, perfect spacing, overlapping fields of fire, shields synchronized to create an impenetrable barrier. It was beautiful, overwhelming, unstoppable. The 12 human ships accelerated toward them. "They're running toward us," an officer's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "No evasive maneuvers, no defensive formations, just straight at us." "Suicide run," Shrix decided. "Trying to take as many of us with them as possible. Admirable but futile, prepare point defense. Don't let them ram our ships." But the human vessels weren't headed for the Krillian fleet. They curved at the last moment, vectoring toward the massive asteroid belt that ringed Darwin's Reach system. The Krillians had noted the belt during their approach, but dismissed it as irrelevant to the battle. "They're using the asteroids for cover," Shrix's tactical officer reported. "Should we pursue?" "Of course, they're trapped, no way out except through us." Shrix gestured with one blade arm. "Follow them in, flush them out." The Krillian fleet entered the asteroid field. And the asteroids opened fire. Hundreds of hidden platforms, camouflaged to look like ordinary space rocks, suddenly blazed with weapons fire. Rail guns launched solid metal slugs at 30% the speed of light. No energy signature to warn of their approach. No heat bloom to target. Just kinetic death moving faster than most sensors could track. The first volley tore through the Krillian formation like a predator through prey. Shields designed to deflect energy beams and plasma bolts did nothing against chunks of tungsten moving at relativistic speeds. Ships simply disintegrated. Hulls punched through. Reactors breached. 200 Krillian vessels destroyed in the first 10 seconds. Evasive action, Shrix roared. Return fire. But firing at what? The platforms were scattered through millions of cubic kilometers of space. Krillian weapons blasted asteroids to rubble, but for every platform destroyed, 3 more revealed themselves. And the humans had done something clever. The platforms weren't stationary. They were mounted on asteroid fragments under thrust, constantly moving, making targeting nearly impossible. The 12 human warships wheeled around, no longer fleeing. They launched thousands of small objects, drone fighters, each one barely larger than a human, packed with explosives and basic guidance systems. They swarmed through the Krillian formation like angry insects. Krillian Point Defense opened fire, destroying hundreds of drones, but there were thousands more. And while the Krillians focused on the drones, the hidden platforms continued their devastating bombardment. Ships died by the dozen. The perfect formation collapsed into chaos. Retreat, someone shouted on the command channel. We're being slaughtered. Hold formation, Shrix countermanded. We outnumber them 200 to 1, stand and fight. One of the human frigates, already damaged and venting atmosphere, suddenly changed course. It accelerated directly at a Krillian carrier. No weapons fire, no missiles, just raw speed and determination. Destroy that ship, Shrix ordered. Dozens of weapons locked onto the human vessel. Fire tore it apart, but momentum doesn't care about destruction. The wreckage, all several thousand tons of it, slammed into the Krillian carrier at combat velocity. Both ships vanished in an expanding cloud of debris and radiation. They're insane, the tactical officer whispered. They just sacrificed a ship to kill one of ours. Another human vessel did the same thing. Then another, trading themselves for Krillian ships at ratios that made no strategic sense, except it did, because each human ship took multiple Krillian vessels with them, and each sacrifice bought the automated platforms more time to fire. The battle raged for 3 hours. When it ended, the Krillian fleet had lost 2,300 ships. 8 of the 12 human vessels were destroyed. The other 4, damaged but functional, withdrew to the far side of the colony. Shrix sat in his command chair, staring at the casualty reports. His flagship had survived, but barely. Half his fleet was gone, against 12 ships. How, he said to nobody in particular, how did they do this? His sensor officer brought up analysis data. The platforms had been hidden in the asteroid belt for years, probably since the colony was first established. The humans had prepared for this exact scenario. They'd studied the terrain, positioned their weapons, waited. They knew we were coming, the tactical officer said. Before we even made our demands, before any of this started, they knew someone would try to take their colony eventually. Shrix looked at the tactical display. His fleet was broken, demoralized. The survivors were already requesting permission to retreat, and this had been one colony, just one. The humans had 47. Send a message to High Command, Shrix said quietly. We need the main fleet, all of it. Back on Earth, Admiral Raymond Chen watched the battle recordings from Darwin's Reach. He sat in the war room deep beneath the Unified Defense Headquarters, surrounded by tactical displays and strategic projections. Around him, other officers analyzed every aspect of the engagement. They fell for it, Chen said. He was an older man, his face lined with the weight of command decisions. Phase 1 complete. Casualties were within projected ranges, an analyst reported. 8 ships lost, 4 damaged. Kill ratio 190 to 1. The Krillians will send everything now, Patricia Reeves said. She stood beside Chen, reviewing fleet disposition reports. Their pride won't let them back down. Chen nodded. Good, let them commit. Once their main fleet is deployed, we execute Phase 2. He touched a control. The display changed, showing the true size of the human fleet. Not 200 ships, 15,000, hidden in lunar orbit around Earth, concealed in shipyards on Mars, disguised as mining operations in the asteroid belt. The entire industrial capacity of humanity secretly devoted to military production for the past 80 years. We only showed them what we wanted them to see, Chen said. The galaxy thinks we're weak, unprepared. They think Darwin's reach was desperation and luck. Reeves smiled grimly. And when they send 50,000 ships to crush us? Then we show them what happens when you declare war on a species that spent 10,000 years learning how to kill. Chen pulled up historical files, ancient battles, Thermopylae, Canna, Agincourt, victories against impossible odds through superior tactics and understanding of terrain. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was about to be delivered. Send orders to all colonies, he said. Activate defense protocols, deploy hidden assets, and prepare the home fleet. The command rippled out across human space. On every colony world, hidden weapons came online. Ships disguised as civilian vessels revealed their true nature. Entire moons that were actually battle stations began powering up. The Krillians had won the first battle by numbers, but they'd lost the war the moment they assumed humans fought the same way everyone else did. And now they were going to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating the species from Earth. 3 days after Darwin's reach, the Galactic Council met in emergency session again. This time nobody was celebrating. The chamber felt like a funeral hall. Representatives from dozens of species sat in shocked silence, watching the battle footage that had spread across every news network in known space. The Krillian ambassador, a different individual than before, stood at the podium with slumped shoulders. The Krillian Empire regrets the loss of life at Darwin's reach. We request a temporary ceasefire to negotiate terms. Ambassador Reed, sporting a fresh bandage on his cheek where it was finally healing, remained seated in the human delegation box. He said nothing, made no gesture, simply watched. The human delegation does not respond, Orin asked carefully. We offered peace terms 72 hours ago, Reed said quietly. The Krillian Empire rejected them. We have nothing further to discuss until our original terms are accepted. You killed 2,300 ships. The Krillian ambassador's voice cracked with something that might have been fear. Thousands of our people. You came to kill millions of ours, Reed replied. You're upset that we defended ourselves effectively. In the Torven Confederacy chambers, light years away, the Trade Council held their own emergency meeting. The Torvens were reptilian merchants who had built an empire on commerce and contracts. They'd done business with both humans and Krillians for decades. Pull up every human commercial contract from the past 80 years, the first merchant ordered. His assistants complied. Thousands of documents filled the displays, trade agreements, mining rights, technology exchanges. The analysts began reading through them, looking for patterns. They're all the same, one analyst said after an hour. Every contract has extensive legal protections, arbitration clauses, exit strategies, contingency planning for every possible scenario. Show me the military equipment sales, the first merchant said. More documents appeared. Humans had sold mining lasers to the Torvans, civilian power plants, shield generators rated for radiation protection, thruster systems for cargo vessels, all perfectly legal civilian technology. Run an analysis. Could these civilian items be repurposed for military use? The computer worked for several minutes. The answer made the first merchant's scales go cold. Every single item they sold us could be converted to military applications within 48 hours. The mining lasers become ship weapons. The power plants run military shields. The thrusters fit warships. They've been preparing for war while selling us technology that looks peaceful. What does that tell us? That humans plan for every contingency, including war, always. The Solarian Collective, the aquatic philosophers, had reached similar conclusions through different means. They studied human culture, not contracts. Their scholars had spent weeks analyzing human literature, entertainment, and art obtained through cultural exchanges. In their underwater cities, the Solarian Council of Wisdom reviewed their findings. Humans have over 3,000 documented martial arts, one scholar reported. Physical combat styles developed over thousands of years. They teach children to fight with their bare hands. Their entertainment is revealing, another added. 60% of their popular fiction involves warfare or conflict. They've created entire genres dedicated to military science fiction, war films, and strategic games. The third wise one, eldest of the council, spoke from her meditation pool. I've reviewed their philosophical texts, Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Machiavelli. They've spent millennia thinking about warfare at the deepest levels. Strategy, psychology, logistics. They don't just fight wars, they study them like we study art. What does this mean for the current conflict? It means, the third wise one said slowly, that the Krillians have attacked a species whose entire cultural evolution centered around getting better at organized violence. Humans don't see war as glory. They see it as a problem to solve, and they've had 10,000 years to work on solutions. A journalist named Rena, a four-armed mammalian species from the Outer Rim, had embedded herself with human refugees evacuating from New Anchorage. She expected to find panic, terror, desperate civilians fleeing for their lives. Instead, she found something that disturbed her more than fear would have. An elderly woman named Agnes Murphy supervised the loading of farm equipment onto transport ships. She was 83 years old according to her documents, born on Earth, immigrated to New Anchorage 40 years ago. She moved with calm efficiency, directing younger people where to store supplies. "Aren't you frightened?" Rena asked, her four hands adjusting her recording equipment. "The Krillians could attack at any moment." Agnes looked at her with patient amusement. "Honey, my grandfather fought in Earth's last war. My mother survived the Mars Rebellion. My daughter served in the Titan Defense Force. You think this is the first time my family faced people trying to kill us? But the odds don't matter much when someone threatens your home," Agnes interrupted. "You fight or you die. Sometimes you fight and die anyway, but at least you go down swinging." Rena watched children playing in the evacuation center. They weren't crying or clinging to parents. They were playing something called war games, complex tactical scenarios with roles and rules that seemed too sophisticated for kids so young. A boy, maybe 10 years old, noticed her watching. "You're a reporter, right?" "Yes, what's your name?" "Sam, want to know something cool?" He didn't wait for an answer. "My teacher says humans have been fighting for so long that we're actually worse at peace than war. We're really good at war, though, the best in the galaxy." "Doesn't that scare you?" Sam thought about it. "My dad says if you're not willing to die for something, it wasn't worth having anyway. This is our home, so no, I'm not scared." Rena filed her report that night. She titled it, "The Children Who Don't Fear Death." It went viral across the galactic networks within hours. Meanwhile, in the Krillian Empire, a very different mood prevailed. The Emperor sat in his throne room, reading casualty reports. 2,300 ships, 34,000 dead. The worst military defeat in Krillian history. And against what? 12 human vessels. His military analysts stood before him, mandibles trembling. "Explain," the Emperor demanded. "The humans prepared," the chief analyst said. "They fortified the asteroid belt years ago. Every colony likely has similar defenses. They anticipated our attack before we even made demands." "How is that possible?" Because they think like us, Your Majesty. They assume everyone eventually becomes an enemy, so they prepare for conflict with everyone. Another analyst brought up tactical projections. Our standard formation is designed for fighting species who value their ships and crews. The humans don't. They sacrifice vessels freely if it achieves strategic goals. We don't know how to fight an enemy that values victory over survival. Then learn, the Emperor said coldly. I'm committing the full fleet, 45,000 ships. They can't have defenses everywhere. We'll overwhelm them with pure numbers. Your Majesty, the chief analyst said carefully, recommend we accept their peace terms. The cost of this war is irrelevant. The Emperor stood, his massive frame towering over the analysts. We are the Krillian Empire. We've conquered 12 species. We don't surrender to mammals who have been in space for less than a century. The analysts bowed and left, but in the hallways outside they whispered to each other. Humans had destroyed 2,300 ships with 12. What would they do with 200 or more? Because nobody really believed humans only had 200 ships, not anymore. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen received the intelligence reports. The Krillian Empire was mobilizing its entire fleet, every ship, every resource. They were going to bet everything on one massive assault. They're doing exactly what we expected, Chen said to his staff. Pride over sense, emotion over logic. When they arrive, where will we make our stand? An officer asked. Chen smiled. Everywhere. We're not defending one point. We're defending every colony simultaneously. And when they split their forces to attack multiple targets, that's when we hit them where they don't expect. He pulled up a star chart. The Krillian supply lines stretched across 200 light-years, fuel depots, ammunition stockpiles, repair yards, the infrastructure that supported their massive military machine. We don't need to destroy their fleet, Chen said. We just need to cut it off from everything it needs to function. Then we wait. Let logistics win the war for us. And if they realize what we're doing, then they'll have to choose. Protect their supply lines or press the attack. Either choice weakens them. That's the beauty of fighting a species that only understands direct confrontation. They've never faced an enemy willing to play the long game. Patricia Reeves nodded slowly. We're not just fighting a war. We're teaching them what warfare actually means. Exactly, Chen agreed. The Krillians think war is about who has more ships. We know it's about logistics, morale, strategic depth, and willingness to endure. They're about to get a masterclass in all four. He sent out new orders. Human strike teams prepared to hit Krillian supply lines. Fast attack squadrons loaded with missiles and electronic warfare equipment. They wouldn't engage the main fleet directly. They'd just make sure that fleet had nowhere to refuel, rearm, or repair. The trap was set. The Krillians were coming with everything they had, and humanity was ready to show them that sometimes having everything isn't enough. The Krillian main fleet dropped from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Addis Ababa system. 45,000 warships materialized in perfect formation, blocking out the stars themselves. It was the largest military deployment in recorded galactic history, a wall of steel and firepower that could crack planets. Commander Shriek stood on the bridge of his new flagship, Retribution's Call. The Emperor had given him one chance to redeem himself after the disaster at Darwin's Reach. Failure meant execution. Success meant glory eternal. Scan the system, he ordered. The sensor arrays worked for several minutes. When the results appeared, Shrix felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: confusion. We detect 800 human vessels defending the colony, the sensor operator reported. Standard defensive formation around the inhabited planet. 800 against 45,000. Still absurd odds, but now Shrix knew better than to celebrate early. He studied the tactical display, looking for hidden weapons platforms, mined regions, any sign of the tricks humans had used before. No asteroid belt in this system, the tactical officer noted. Primary planet is habitable, 2 moons, standard orbital dynamics, nowhere to hide weapons. Then why aren't they retreating? Shrix wondered aloud. They know what's coming. Perhaps they're finally being rational, one officer suggested, realizing that resistance is futile. But Shrix had seen the battle recordings too many times. Humans didn't do futile. They did desperate. They did impossible. They did insane, but never futile. All ships advance, he ordered anyway. Weapons hot, shields maximum. If they have another trick, I want us ready. The massive fleet moved forward. 45,000 ships in formation, an unstoppable force advancing on 800 defenders. The human fleet didn't retreat. They charged. Again, the same suicidal tactic as before. Here we go, Shrix muttered. Battle formation Delta, prepare for. The human ships reached optimal weapons range and opened fire, but not at the Krillian fleet. They fired at their own moons. Dozens of missiles slammed into the 2 satellites orbiting New Addis Ababa. What are they doing? An officer asked. The moons exploded, not from the missile impacts. The missiles had just triggered something. Nuclear demolition charges buried deep inside both satellites. The moons had been hollowed out and packed with fusion warheads. The explosions sent billions of tons of rock hurtling into space, a massive debris field expanding in all directions, and the Krillian fleet was already committed to their approach vector. Evasive action, Shrix roared. But you can't dodge when you're in a tight formation with 45,000 other ships. The debris slammed into the Krillian fleet like the fist of an angry god. Smaller rocks shattered against shields. Larger chunks punched through hulls. Entire sections of the formation disintegrated under the barrage. 800 human ships dove into the chaos. They weren't trying to fight the whole Krillian fleet. They were exploiting the confusion, targeting disabled vessels, launching boarding pods at damaged ships, using the wreckage as cover while they struck and withdrew. For 6 hours the battle raged. The Krillian fleet tried to organize, but the debris field made coordination impossible. Ships collided with rocks. Weapons fire hit friendly vessels. The perfect formation became a scattered mob. When Shrix finally established some control, he took stock. 4,000 ships destroyed. Another 3,000 damaged. The human fleet had lost 200 vessels but was still operational, still fighting. Withdraw, Shrix ordered. To the staging area, we need to regroup. But the humans had predicted that too. The safe retreat vector that the Krillians had used to enter the system was mined, not with simple explosives, with gravity traps, artificial singularities that grabbed ships and wouldn't let go. The Krillian fleet ran straight into them. Another 2,000 ships lost in the retreat. When the survivors reached the staging point, 40 light-years from any combat, Shrix sat in his command chair and stared at the casualty reports. He'd entered the battle with 45,000 ships. He had 28,000 operational vessels now. In one engagement, humans had destroyed or disabled 17,000 ships. How, he asked the empty air, how do they keep doing this? His chief analyst had an answer. They're using our advantages against us. We have numbers, so they create situations where numbers become a disadvantage. We have formation discipline, so they attack in ways that make formations a liability. We fight the way we've always fought. They fight the way we don't expect. Then we adapt, Shrix said. Study their tactics, learn to counter them. With respect, Commander, that's the problem. They've been studying warfare for thousands of years. We've been conquering through superior numbers for centuries. We don't know how to adapt because we've never needed to. While the Krillian fleet licked its wounds, human strike teams hit elsewhere. 12 separate fleets, 1,000 ships each, struck across Krillian space. They didn't target colonies or civilian infrastructure. They hit military logistics. Fuel depots turned into expanding clouds of fire. Ammunition stockpiles detonated. Repair yards transformed into scrap metal. The human attacks were surgical, precise, devastating, and they left the Krillian Empire with a terrible choice. Pursue the war with a fleet that couldn't refuel or rearm, or pull back forces to protect their infrastructure. On the Krillian homeworld, civil unrest began, not from rebels or insurgents, from ordinary citizens who wondered why their empire was fighting this war. Human intelligence teams had hacked civilian networks, showing real battle footage. The propaganda about glorious victories couldn't compete with videos of Krillian ships dying by the thousands. "Why are we fighting the mammals?" protesters chanted in the capital city. "What did they do to us?" The government tried to suppress the demonstrations. That just made them larger. Young Krillians started questioning the entire military system. If the great empire couldn't defeat a species less than a century into space travel, what did that say about Krillian superiority? Meanwhile, the human fleets continued operations, not massive battles, constant pressure, raiding supply lines, ambushing isolated squadrons, forcing the Krillian military to spread thin, trying to protect everything. Admiral Chen watched the strategic map from Earth. The Krillian Empire was coming apart, not from one decisive defeat, but from 1,000 small cuts, exactly as planned. "They're trying to negotiate again," Patricia Reeves reported. "Direct channel from Emperor to Prime Minister Okonkwo." "What are they offering?" "Mutual withdrawal. Both sides return to pre-war borders. No reparations, no admission of guilt." Chen shook his head. "Not good enough. They started this. They need to end it properly." Okonkwo agreed. Her response to the Krillian Emperor was brief and brutal. "You struck our ambassador, you threatened our colonies, you attacked our people. You've lost 30,000 ships trying to exterminate us, and now you want to call it even. No, you wanted war, now you have it. Accept our original terms or we continue until you have no fleet left." The Emperor read the response in his throne room. His advisors surrounded him, all urging acceptance. The military was broken. The economy was collapsing. Public support had evaporated. Pride was expensive, and the Krillian Empire couldn't afford it anymore. But accepting human terms meant acknowledging defeat, meant admitting that the great empire had been humiliated by newcomers, meant changing everything about how Krillians saw themselves. "We continue fighting," the Emperor said finally. "Deploy the reserves, conscript civilian vessels. We are the Krillian Empire, we don't surrender." His advisors left the throne room in silence. In the hallways, they talked quietly among themselves. The Emperor was leading them to destruction. Someone would have to do something. 3 days later, the Emperor was found dead in his chambers. Natural causes, the official report said. His successor, a younger member of the royal family, took the throne within hours. Her first act was to send a message to Earth. "The Krillian Empire accepts your terms, all of them. We will withdraw from human territory. We will pay reparations. Those responsible for starting this war will face justice. We ask only for peace." Reed received the message in the Galactic Council chamber. He read it aloud to the assembly. The other species sat in stunned silence. The Krillian Empire, which had conquered 12 species, had just surrendered to humanity. "The Terran Republic accepts," Reed said simply. "We will negotiate the details of implementation, but the war is over." Oren, the Avian Council speaker, spoke carefully. "Ambassador Reed, your species has just defeated the galaxy's most powerful military force. What will you do now?" Reed looked at the assembled delegates, representatives from dozens of species, all wondering if humanity would become the new threat, the new conquerors. "We go home," Reed said. "We rebuild. We remember the cost of this war, and we hope nobody ever makes us do this again." He meant it, but across the galaxy, every species had learned a lesson. Humanity didn't want to fight, but when forced to, they were the deadliest species anyone had ever encountered. The war ended not with celebration but with exhaustion. Humans had won, but they'd paid for it. 89,000 military personnel dead, 12,000 civilians killed in Krillian attacks, 3 colonies scarred. The economic cost was incalculable. And yet humanity had survived. Not just survived. They'd proven that newcomers could stand against empires, that the small could defeat the large, that strategy mattered more than strength. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. 6 months after the war ended, the Galactic Council held a ceremony that nobody had imagined possible. The Krillian delegation, led by Ambassador Tillix, approached the podium with none of the arrogance that had defined their species for centuries. Their mandibles trembled. Their exoskeletons had lost their mirror polish. The Krillian Empire formally requests ratification of the peace treaty with the Terran Republic, Tillix said. His voice carried none of Shrix's mockery, just exhaustion and something that might have been shame. Reed stood in the human delegation box. He looked different now, older. The war had aged everyone involved, but his eyes were clear and his voice was steady. The Terran Republic accepts the Krillian Empire's treaty proposal. We agree to the terms as negotiated. The chamber erupted in applause. Not celebration exactly, more like relief. The war that had terrified half the galaxy was officially over. The terms were harsh. 500 trillion credits in reparations over 20 years. Krillian military reduced by 60% with independent verification. Shrix and 3 other commanders would stand trial for war crimes. Most controversial was the joint memorial at Darwin's Reach, where both species would remember their dead together. So that nobody forgets what pride costs, Reed had insisted during negotiations. The ceremony ended. Delegates filed out, already discussing what the war meant for galactic politics. Everything had changed. The Krillian Empire, once feared, was now broken, and humanity, the newcomers, had become something else entirely. Journalist Renna published her comprehensive analysis 3 days after the ceremony. How Earth won, understanding the Terran Republic, became required reading across the galaxy. Her conclusions shocked many species. Humans hadn't won through superior technology. Their ships were good but not revolutionary. They hadn't won through numbers. Even their real fleet of 15,000 was smaller than the Krillian deployment. They'd won through something else entirely. Humans prepare for war even during peace, Renna wrote. Every colony had defenses installed during construction. Every civilian ship could convert to military use. Every citizen understood basic strategic concepts. They were the only species in the galaxy who assumed conflict was inevitable and planned accordingly. She'd interviewed dozens of human soldiers, civilians, and leaders. The pattern was always the same. Humans expected the worst and prepared for it, not from paranoia, from experience. We nearly destroyed ourselves so many times, one veteran told her. We learned that peace is something you build and defend, not something that just happens. The Torven Confederacy was the first to adapt. They immediately signed a mutual defense pact with Earth. Other species followed. Within 3 months, 17 different species had requested human military advisors. They wanted to learn, to think like humans thought. Admiral Chen found himself teaching strategic planning to alien officers who had never considered warfare beyond direct confrontation. He showed them logistics, supply line management, asymmetric tactics, the art of making enemies fight on your terms. You have more ships than us, one Solarian officer said during a training session. Why do you focus so much on tactics? Because ships are just tools, Chen replied. Victory comes from using those tools better than your opponent. We didn't beat the Krillians by having more. We beat them by thinking 3 steps ahead. The Solarian collective had reached their own conclusions about humanity. Their philosophers published papers analyzing human culture. The findings disturbed many. Humans are the only species who weaponize their own history, one paper concluded. They study every war they've ever fought. They teach it to children. They analyze their mistakes obsessively. For them, peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's preparation for the next one. But there was something else in those papers. Admiration. Humans had shown that small species could defend themselves, that newcomers didn't have to accept the galaxy as it was, that change was possible. On the Krillian homeworld, a different transformation was happening. The new Empress had opened up the government to reform. Young Krillians who had protested the war now entered politics. The military caste, once dominant, found itself questioned and criticized. And surprisingly, a friendship movement emerged. Krillian veterans who had fought humans started speaking publicly about their experiences, not the battles, the aftermath. A soldier named Trix had been wounded at New Addis Ababa, his ship destroyed, life support failing, waiting to die. A human rescue vessel had found him. They'd pulled him from the wreckage, given him medical care, treated him like any other casualty. They fought us to the death, Trix told a packed auditorium at the Krillian Military Academy. Then they saved our lives. Who does that? The question resonated. Humans had devastated the Krillian fleet. But when the fighting stopped, they'd offered medical supplies, helped with rescue operations, treated prisoners according to their own laws. They'd fought like demons and then acted with honor. We thought war was about strength, Trix continued. His lectures were now part of the reformed academy curriculum. Humans taught us it's about will, about believing in something worth fighting for. We fought for conquest. They fought for survival. That's why we lost. 3 years after the war, the Galactic Council faced a new crisis. The Vorash swarm appeared at the edge of explored space, an insectoid hive mind with technology beyond anything the Council had encountered. They'd already consumed 2 minor species. They didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, just attacked and assimilated. The Council met in emergency session. Panic filled the chamber. The Vorash had destroyed a fleet twice the size of what remained of Krillian military power. What could the Council do? Ambassador Reed stood slowly. Every delegate turned to look at him. Earth will help, he said simply. Can you defeat them? Someone asked. I don't know, Reed admitted, but we'll try, that's what we do. The call went out across human space. Not conscription, volunteers, young people who had grown up hearing stories of the Krillian War, people who wanted to prove themselves. Within 2 weeks, Earth had mobilized 5,000 ships and 50,000 soldiers. Admiral Patricia Reeves, now fleet commander, addressed the assembled forces before deployment. 3 years ago, we fought for ourselves, for our homes, for our families. Today, we fight for others, for species who can't defend themselves. This is what humanity has always done. We protect those who need protecting. She paused, looking at the faces before her, young, eager, scared but determined. The galaxy learned what we can do in war. Now let's show them what we stand for. We're not conquerors. We're defenders. We're the ones who say no when monsters threaten the innocent. That's what makes us human. The fleet deployed. Other species watched in awe. Humans weren't fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting because somebody needed to, because it was right. The campaign against the Vorash took 8 months. It was brutal. Humans lost 2,000 ships and 15,000 personnel, but they won. They drove the swarm back, established defensive perimeters, gave the Council time to organize a proper response. And when it was over, humans didn't demand anything. No territory, no tribute, just thanks. Orin, the Council speaker, called Reed to his private chambers after the victory celebration. Your species has changed the galaxy, the old avian said. Not through conquest, through example. Half the Council is reorganizing their military based on human doctrine. Species who haven't fought in centuries are learning strategy and tactics. Is that good or bad? Reed asked. Both, Orin admitted. You've made the galaxy safer by showing that aggression has consequences, but you've also militarized species who were peaceful. The question is what comes next. Reed looked out at the stars visible through the chamber windows. We don't want an empire. We just want to be left alone to live our lives. But we've learned that sometimes being left alone requires being strong enough that nobody tries to bother you, and using that strength to protect others. That's who we are, Reed said. We've spent 10,000 years hurting each other. Maybe it's time we use all that experience to help instead. 5 years after the war, humanity had become something unexpected. Not conquerors, not an empire, but guardians. The species others called when threats emerged. The ones who stood between the weak and the strong. Agnes Murphy, now 88, still lived on her rebuilt farm on New Anchorage. She gave an interview to Rena, who had become something of a friend over the years. Do you regret it? Rena asked. The war, the cost. Agnes thought about it while watering her crops. Nobody wants war, but sometimes you don't get to choose. The Krillians chose for us. We just chose how we'd respond. And you chose to fight. We chose to survive, Agnes corrected. Fighting was just the method, and now we use that same determination to help others survive. That's the difference between us and the old empires. They conquered. We defend. The memorial at Darwin's Reach was completed 6 years after the battle. 2 walls of names, human and Krillian, the dead from both sides, remembered together. At the dedication ceremony, Reed and Tillich stood side by side. They died because we chose pride over wisdom, Tillich said, reading from his prepared statement. May their sacrifice remind us that peace is always preferable to glory. Reed added his own words. They died doing their duty, on both sides. We honor them by learning from our mistakes. By building a galaxy where such sacrifices become unnecessary. A Krillian child, maybe 10 years old, placed flowers at the base of the human names. A human child did the same at the Krillian wall. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. In his final report to the Galactic Council before retiring, Orin wrote a summary that became part of official historical records. Humanity entered the galactic stage as newcomers, untested, unknown. The Krillian War could have destroyed them. Instead, it revealed what they truly were, not the strongest species, not the most advanced, but possibly the most dangerous when threatened and certainly the most protective of others once allied. He paused in his writing, considering his next words carefully. They asked me once what humanity's greatest strength is. I've had years to think about it. Their strength is memory. They remember every war, every mistake, every victory. They learn from it, study it, teach it to their children. While other species forget their conflicts within generations, humans build monuments to remember. They are a species that refuses to forget the cost of peace. That's what makes them dangerous. That's also what makes them the galaxy's best hope. Reed read those words in his retirement home on Earth. Outside his window, children played in parks that had been battlefields during the last war. The planet was healing. Humanity was healing. But they would never forget. The monuments stood. The lessons remained. The next generation learned. Because that was what humans did. They remembered, they prepared, and when called, they answered. The galaxy had learned to fear them during the war. Now it was learning to trust them during the peace. And perhaps, Reed thought, that was the real victory. Not defeating the Krillians, but showing the galaxy that strength could protect instead of conquer, that the deadliest species could also be the kindest. As long as you never force them to choose between the two.